What is going on, everybody? It's going to take a second for this to upload, so I'm going to say it again. What's happening, everybody? Happy Thursday, last day before the All Star break. Certainly nice to end it with somewhat of a bang last night, but we've got still a slate going tonight. I want to talk real quickly about yesterday, and just since I've joined up with the RotoQL, BetQL people, they've been just awesome, man. Like they've been great, and familiarizing with my site and using different projections than what I usually have done, I think has positively impacted my play. So we're going to go through a few of my lineups from last night real quick and just talk about basically what I was using from BetQL, RotoQL. We talked about it a lot during the show, but I'm sure some people missed it. And we'll be having a set time for this, and we'll have more people coming in regularly. But for right now, this is sort of where we're at. So basically, what I went with on my 20 on my 1500 or yeah, I guess it was a $1,500 buy-in. It was 200K for first. It was obviously a big tournament. I had a really nice line and actually ended up with the same lineup as Redcoat exactly, which is kind of interesting. He maxed out. I played one entry, but I had a solid result for my one entry. I finished 24th. I really liked the lineup and what I did correlating wise. You just had the Nance and Young. It wasn't anything shocking there, but to get Beasley and Monk instead of playing the other guys and paying up for Luca, I thought was a really good way to go. I did skip Luca in my other lineups, which we'll talk about, and played LeBron. Both of them were basically unowned. And Luca and Fox both could have had a much bigger game if Sacramento kept it a little closer, maybe more competitive. And Fox obviously could have had a much better game. He really, really didn't play well. But still, a nice result. Felt good about it. So that was a good thing early in the night. It was pretty clear that I was going to have at least a solid night. I sort of picked the right value, and I used the projections on BetQL. Let me go. That's my golf lineups, which I never play golf, but apparently I'm off to a pretty good start. Um, but I want to go back to take to look at some of the better lineups. What I did with was I was looking at the projections. I'm not a projection I don't succumb entirely to them, but it is interesting that the projections were a little bit different for certain guys on RotoQL than it was on some of my other projection sites that I tend to use. Guys that were really high on like Devonte Graham. I ended up playing a lot more. Serge Ibaka sort of got lost in that tournament. I loved the Serge Ibaka play because he was a guy who was going to be like 40% owned, and then all the news, and then we didn't know if he was going to play, and it just basically left him being way less owned than he should have. Now I did make, you know, a few other pivot builds, but I really liked Wancho and James Johnson as the parts of the front court of that game. I obviously used D'Angelo over here, who went nuts, and then ran it back with a lower owned Beasley. But the real play was LeBron here. What's crazy is this tournament had a lot of people in it. It's the $88 buy-in. This is not like a 500 person tournament. We had a big field and with 1,936 people, but this lineup was good enough to take it down, and I feel great about it. I like what I mostly did. I didn't. I did a hardcore, obviously, game stack, and that was sort of my thinking was I was going to hardcore game stack that Minnesota Charlotte game. We talked about it on air. I liked the over a lot more when we had Cat in, obviously. So it sort of changed things a little bit, but I like Charlotte's chances a lot better. So I did end up stacking that game quite a bit fully. And playing the guys from the Charlotte side was as important as playing it was from the guys from the Minnesota side. Getting one of the Graham or I guess it was Graham really who mostly put up the big game for Charlotte, but obviously it worked out. It was really good, and we did on RotoQL have a higher projection on LeBron than other sites. That's another thing that I was factoring into it, and we've been so far when I've agreed and I had my initial thoughts on something, and then RotoQL's agreed with me. That's when I find that the syncing up really, really has been valuable because we were able just to hammer this one home last night, and yeah, it feels great. So off to a great start. Anyway, just wanted to mention one other lineup. I did do something I don't usually do. You can see I had a 382 here in this lineup that won the box out. Now I didn't. I had the same lineup at one point in the fadeaway because I had 50 entries in the fadeaway and 10 in the box out. But what was interesting was it didn't end up quite meshing where I ended up having my box out in the same lineup as I had the fadeaway. So you can see right down here. We scroll a little further. It's probably on page 2 because I played 50 of them. Let's see, where is it? There it is. The second place entry. I mean, it's a little bit brutal to be honest, because it usually a 65K loss, like a swing like that would have bugged me. And the thing that was really annoying is just it was right there for the taking. I would have won the slate with my 382. It was good enough. This obviously was just one of my many lineups, but I did really well overall. I mean, I had another one 16th that was making a run. May not sound like much, but when you're dealing with 31,000 people, it's really hard to win those tournaments. And I really like the lineup I built here. What I tried to do was go a little bit different because it was more of a longer shot tournament, so I played healed. But again, I wish I would have just stuck with my other one and played it over here. It would have made me an extra 65K. But I can't complain. Overall, a profit of around 90K on the night, 89, I think it was. Really, really solid. Would have been nice to make it 100 plus, but couldn't be much happier. And again, I sell out some of my action on Stake King, so I didn't win all of this myself. I mean, I won it all myself. I did all the work, but other people certainly benefited, and it's nice to see when you can share it with other people. It alleviates some of the high risk and allows me to play some bigger tournaments. Instead of playing 2,000 a day, I tend to play more like 5 to 10 because I have, I'm playing with these people, and I'm telling you right now, it really is fun to share it with people. So anyway, did I pivot down from Trey to LBJ after the Towns news? No, I played Trey and LBJ. You can see in my best lineup, I actually had both Trey and LBJ. I had LBJ. I think I had LeBron at about 20% or 15%. And I think I had, on FanDuel, I had him in half my lineups. But on DK, and on FanDuel, I look, usually we could do before to talk about my FanDuel lineups. They weren't nearly as impressive. It was a slight profitable day. But you can see over here in my best lineup that I just showed. Actually, I didn't have Trey in that one. I ended up leaving LeBron in that one and keeping Russell, who people didn't quite pay up for as much as they did on FanDuel. But still was pretty high owned. And you can see you don't really need to pivot off of chalk in basketball is going to hit more than any other sport. I'm actually sort of surprised where Juancho ended up being low owned. I guess people just sort of like, why do we need to play Naz Reid also and Juancho? Like, there's just a lot of guys you could choose between. Naz Reid was also low owned. I thought for a minute he was going to have a big one. But this was pretty much, not the nuts, but it's pretty close and pretty easy win on the, win by more than 10 is pretty unusual in basketball. But it just goes to show you, look, I mean, you're beating, this would have beaten 33,000 people. And I only have one player below 10% owned, which is on 11 game slate. That's pretty little for me. I like to be contrarian, but there was enough spots and enough you could do lineup construction wise, and then just plugging in that LeBron play who just went off obviously ends up helping. And by the way, it wouldn't have mattered. I mean, it would have mattered, but it would I could have just as easily played Luka at small forward, and he put up 61, and that could have easily been 71 also. Anyway. It felt good. If it was a great slate, feel really good about it. Really appreciate all you guys tuning in. I want to make this show more of like a back and forth. I feel like that's what really does help in terms of sometimes like making yourself a better player, making yourself better at not just DFS but regular sports betting. Some other people can bring up questions that maybe you can think about it a different light, because that's sort of why I got onto LeBron. It wasn't like I looked at it. I like LeBron in tough matchups, and I did talk about that on air yesterday. But I really was looking at it from I needed a low-owned guy, and I had plenty of money to spend. So LeBron and Luka were sort of the guys I ended up going with. And obviously it worked out. So I feel great about it. Really, really solid slate. This is obviously a picture of the winner. And again, it would have been nice to win the 200K or win the 100K and the $15, but I can't really complain. It was a really good slate. I ran good and I played good. I think I've been on it lately. Almost won the Monster the night before. So since I've teamed up with this RotoQL, BetQL, we are making some money, and I would really encourage you guys, if you want to grab get a great deal on what is incredible content, just put my name in BobbyFi at checkout for 30% off your first month. I think it's a great site, and I am happy that I have been, I don't want to say introduced, because I haven't been, I was already introduced, but I'm happy I've been reintroduced to BetQL and RotoQL, because I hadn't been using the site for a couple years, and there is some really interesting things in terms of differentiating and projections. We had, what stands out, like Derek White the other night, was something that on RotoQL was rated very highly. I think we had him almost at 7x, whereas on other sites they had him more in the 5x range, and he ended up putting about 9x up. So he helped people win some tournaments, and hopefully giving that piece of information away helped some of you guys out there as well. It's going to take a while till we have a huge group, I think, in these chat rooms, because a lot of my people are still converting over from my YouTube channel to our channel here on QL TV. But we're going to grow, and you guys were here at the beginning. And again, right now you're getting free advice for, look, I like talking myself up. I don't like being bragging. I'm just talking about it as a realistic way. You're getting free advice from a guy who is making a lot of money at this, and I'm showing you exactly what my lineups are. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about BetQL, some of the best bets of the day. It's only a 2-game slate, but it's one I actually intend on watching. I really am excited about these actual games. So, just starting off with that, I do want to start off with a few betting trends that we noticed. On BetQL, so the Thunder have won 12 straight games against the spread on the road. 12 straight games. That's an incredible number. 12 against the spread on the road. I mean, it's worth noting. I tend to be leaning a little bit more everything New Orleans these days, but that's just an interesting trend. So certainly wouldn't want to get a whole bunch of money out on there on New Orleans, because I do think that there's something to that. These Thunder are tough. They can play with you anywhere. They're experienced. They've got a nice blend of young and old. They're a really, really solid basketball team, and certainly would never count them out of a game, but I don't know that I would take them to straight up win this game tonight. I do think it's an interesting bet. I'm sort of going back and forth on it. The other one is the under has gone 8-2 in the Clippers' 10 games as an underdog this season, and that is one I can fully get behind tonight. The Clippers are, what do we have them right now? I'm just going to grab my sheets. Sorry, I had to log out so I could show you guys the RotoQL, the BetQL page that we're going to take a look at in a minute. The Clippers basically hitting the under here, I feel like, is a fairly safe bet. I've actually been very unimpressed by the Clippers for a while now, and I think they'll start playing better at some point, but they have not looked good to me. I think that this game hits the under, and 8-2, in 10 games as underdogs this season. That's pretty good information right there. So that's something I wanted to point out. We'll start talking some DFS. We'll talk about my current lineups. Just wanted to leave this up there because it makes me feel good. No, I wanted to leave it up there for a minute, so maybe people tuning in who hadn't seen what had happened just got an idea of it. And again, just can't be more happy to be a part of the BetQL RotoQL family. We're gonna challenge anybody in the industry, because between me and these projections, I feel like we can do some great things here. Again, sounds like I'm bragging, but feeling pretty good today. Can you please do us a favor, click the like, the thumbs up, and please subscribe. Make sure if you haven't subscribed and you're not subscribing that you're subscribing, because we are going to be bringing this content to you daily, and we are going to be talking it out and hopefully helping you win a ton of money. So please give it the like, the thumbs up. It means a lot to us, and we appreciate it. All right, guys, let's get into today's slate a little bit. One of the trends that I'm going to mention from RotoQL before we get into some other betting things on BetQL, just with RotoQL, I think it's interesting that the projections are where they are. So we basically have, like most other sites, Danilo Gallinari as the most valuable player, but we have Daniel Tice and Montrezl Harrell much higher rated than other sites do. And what I like about that is these guys are going to be a little bit lower owned. On a 2-game slate, you need to differentiate as much as possible. It's really, really hard to get different. So playing like both of those guys is kind of an interesting way to go, especially on DraftKings where they're both kind of center eligible. Just something worth considering. I also happen to like Zubac as a lower owned play. One guy we're not as high on over here, but still high on him, is Steven Adams. But on FanDuel more so maybe than DraftKings, but it is interesting. Like the other sites out there will tell you Steven Adams is a much better play than we have him projected on RotoQL. I sort of am somewhere in between. I think he's a solid play. I think there's a lot of solid plays out there. I would rather take my shots on the Tice Harrell lower ownership than I would on Adams, I think. That's just the way I want to try and get different. Again, I do have Adams in my first build. Made this build last night, so I want to try and pivot off of some things here. One thing we'll do right away, which we can just very easily do, is basically just take exactly what I just said and put that in the lineup as a 2v2 pivot. Not Adams, Tice and Harrell, who the position inflexibility, the fact that they're now just both center eligible, is actually what's going to keep their ownership lower tonight and make them really interesting plays. You can see I threw Josh Hart in because I wanted to get a little bit different over there. We don't know currently if Brandon Ingram is going to play tonight. The last game before the break, but at the same time, every game matters. They've also looked good without him. It's kind of like I could see it going either way, but I'm sort of leaning towards maybe he doesn't. This is the he doesn't play. Assuming he does play, I think he's a fantastic play, by the way. I don't also like that I didn't get enough of, so I want to make sure that I have, this is actually going to be more of my priority lineup right here. And then, it's not that I love Hayward, but again, I think he'll be a little bit lower owned, and he's actually been really good lately. The matchup obviously is tough against the Clippers, but you look at him, like he's been over 40 in 3 of his last 4. We would love that tonight. Obviously, there's been some guys in and out for the Celtics, but I think it's an interesting way of looking at it. And I like that we've gotten a little bit different with a double Tice-Harrell pairing. I'm going to talk about Cantor later on, too. This is one of those you got to just suck it up and go for it. Make the big pivots, make the big moves, make the low-owned plays. We'll get into low-owned value at the end because it is, from a cash game standpoint, this is a pretty easy slate. I'm just going to mix this around here. But I don't know that I would say that I don't know. I don't know that I would play cash on this slate. I would try and find a differentiator and play just tournament. That's what I'm doing anyway. I'm going to take a quick look and see if you guys have any questions in chat. Remember, throw any questions out the whole time the show goes on. We love the QQs. We like the back and forth. We're going to have other guests on the show, too, after the All-Star break. And it's going to be really, really fun. So make sure to get out there. Let's talk about it. And we're already taking guys, so I'm just going to mention a little bit. I'm going to give you another thing I'm looking at is just some projected ownership. So we currently have Tice, which this would usually be high for a slate at 22%. That's extremely low for this slate. And unlike other sites, we've got him as being a much better value over here on RotoQL. And that's more than all the ammo you need to try and have an excuse to play the low-owned Tice-Harrell combo, where I just don't think that's going to happen. Harrell, you're going to have about 30% ownership. I don't think people are going to play both of those two guys together because it locks up your center spot. You have to leave out Steven Adams in that case. And I think he's going to be the chalkiest of the bunch. But I also think there's some other pivots worth talking about. I don't like the trends for Derek Favors, but the price has got me intrigued. 4.9K. I have to have some exposure to him, I feel like, tonight. Just because you're going to get a low-owned, maybe less than 20% owned guy who could easily crush his value, and there's a lot of other players in this price range. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to just do a 1v1, and his being center only is also going to keep his ownership a little lower. Just a 1v1 swap just like that, and we're going to go, away we go. Same lineup, just with Favors. So getting that low-owned exposure at that center spot, it certainly is the way that I'm leaning early on in the show, or not the show, on the slate. So that's just one way you can do it. And look, you see how you're sort of keeping your core the same, but you're not really, and actually, you know what I'm going to do? Because of keeping the core the same, I do want to get a lineup without Chris Paul. And I really like Chris Paul tonight going back to New Orleans. He's my favorite play. He's going to be the chalk. So just beware. That's all I can say. You're going to deal with a lot of them. We have Lonzo and everything so far. Let's try a Drew and Shea. And this might seem very informal. There's going to be more information to go. But the truth is, it's a good way of sort of making sure you have the right exposures. And then when it comes down to nut crunch time, or however you want to call it, you make your final decisions right then. And that's the way that I like to play. We got Holiday and Shea nicely, both multi-position eligible. I do like Kemba a little bit. I don't know that I want to have this much Josh Hart. But I do think that he's an interesting off-the-board play, especially, obviously, will be less off the board if Brandon Ingram plays, but will be completely off the board, I feel like, if Ingram does in fact play. I'm just going to take a quick look at his ownership projections here. Right now, I've got him literally at less than 5%. So Josh Hart is certainly a guy who I'm going to be trying to take a stand on just because I need to take some stands. Marcus Morris is an interesting conversation with that. The minutes are very secure. The usage is not. I think at this price, he's a fine play. We're going to have to do something a little bit different over here. I've got Zion in every lineup so far. I'm actually okay with that, and I love Gallinari. Like, that's the one guy who stands out on every projection thing. He's in the main, if you look on RotoQL, he's our top guy. That part we're all in agreement on across the industry, that no one wants anyone else. So anyway, getting back to the spot again, I think you are double centering a little bit today. I think that's sort of the route that I'm going. Maybe a little something like that. It feels good just to get a little different exposures. And again, I'm going to make changes at these by the end of the day, but you can sort of see the way that I'm leaning right now, getting that stack of that New Orleans game especially, and then getting some of the other guys in where I can. But I don't have a lot of interest if this was a big slate in a lot of the Boston players. I definitely like the under in this game, but I do think that the ownership is not going to follow them. So I'm going to take some shots, and I'm going to do one right now, actually. Let's enter this in something else here because I want to get more exposure to Cantor. That's the other guy who I feel like has potential slate-breaking ability if things break his way, and he could do it in 20 minutes. So to get low ownership on a guy like Cantor, who I have currently in my first build on FanDuel, is something that I'm very interested in, and we're going to get him into this lineup in just a minute. Let's do that. I plan on maxing out the $15 today because I'm willing to take some giant risks, like playing Josh Hart, foregoing better plays just in the name of ownership and strategy, game theory, basically. So that's sort of what I'm leaning to do right now. You guys, please fire up some questions in chat so we can get a little back and forth going. But I really want to make sure that I get some exposure to some of these guys that I don't have any right now. And Cantor is certainly a wonderful option if he can get any minutes, which is possible because the matchup is about as pure as it gets. You love the matchup here, obviously, but what's really great, what you really got to love here is, I mean, the Clippers have no bigs, but you got to love that you're going to get no ownership on a guy who could absolutely win a slate for you. Anyway, that's where I'm leaning, trying to get different as many ways as I can on this slate. I'm going to keep adding and removing through DK as we go. I want to talk a little bit more about RotoQL in a minute, but I did want to give you guys just a quick glance at what I'm doing with my lineups this evening. So what you see is what you get. You're seeing the exact things that I've got right now, so I appreciate that. All right, let's see. I've got a few things in chat before we get over to some RotoQL stuff. I'm sorry, some BetQL stuff. Do I love Harrell on FanDuel? I like Harrell as a tournament play. I don't feel great about what his role has been. Even when they seem to need size, they actually haven't even used him as much. They're really phasing more towards that Morris lineup because he can play the 5. So we'll see. I wouldn't say that I love Harrell, but I certainly see his value. What can't you guys see? Can't see any lineups? I'm confused. I'm looking at my screen. I need to scroll down a little bit. My bad about that, guys. Sorry about that. I got to get a little bit organized on my end of my screen. It might be a little bit doubled up. I've got to fix my window on my OBS, but hopefully you guys can see it now. Sorry about that. Do I ever play Showdown? This is pretty close to a Showdown, and I do a little bit. I'm not a max entry Showdown kind of a guy. I did do that on the Super Bowl, and I had some success. Won a little bit, nothing special. But I don't know that it's something that I want to do in general. Tonight is a Showdown slate kind of night, though, because you're basically playing a Showdown with 2 games in it. Would I play Drew if Brandon Ingram is in? Absolutely. But because you look, the price is still right. While the usage might go down, this is a small slate. We don't have a ton of options. And if we can get a slightly lower owned Drew Holiday than he's going to be, now he's not going to be low owned. Obviously, people are going to play him. But I think his projection is way too low owned for what he should be. I'm going to have more of Drew and more. I want exposure to Drew. I want a lot of exposure to Lonzo. I want some exposure to Hart. I want some exposure to Redick, which I haven't gotten in yet. I just like that game. I really think this is the game that I'm targeting. And then you look on the other side, and everybody's going to play everybody from New Orleans. And I think that there is just as good of a reason to play everybody from Oklahoma City. I think there's just as good a reason to play everybody from New Orleans. And they're going to be the lower owned of the bunch because if Ingram is in fact back, it's going to spread out the ownership a little bit. And I think Zion has unlocked Lonzo, so that's my thoughts on that. I like Zion and Lonzo a lot. And I think Zion is going to smash in every game. So it's not even bias. It's just I watch the guy play, and it's hard for me not to see him just beat up everybody in the NBA, even though he's facing probably the strongest man in the NBA in Steven Adams. Although the strongest man other than Zion, I should say. Yeah, the projections across the industry, including on RotoQL, are going to be lower than on these Pels than they are elsewhere. And I'm just taking that advantage to go straight Pels. I want a lot of exposure there. I'm actually going to add a few more lineups while I'm doing this. Let's see. We've got the Drew there, the Lonzo. Drew and Lonzo are okay together in some lineups. We need to get more Ingram shares. That's where I need to be. And yes, I think you can play. I think you can play anybody together tonight. It's a 2-game slate. You can't worry about it. You know what I mean? Don't worry about who's taking away from each other. Worry about trying to get different. It's a lot more important on 2-game slates to focus on that than it is on anything else. So that's where you're looking. What I'm liking already that I'm seeing is that I actually have more differentiators than I normally would on a slate like this. And man, that feels really good because it's hard to find differentiators. But when you play the Drews, the Zion, the Drews, the Ingrams, the Cantors, some places, the Tice combined with Harrell, who people are worried about at center. I just think there's a lot of different ways you can go that can sort of lead you in a different direction. Ooh, nice little start to the golf lineups, by the way. I'm like, nobody 10% owned, and everybody's crushing, including I got the leader right now. So that's always nice. But you can see what I'm going to do here is just immediately make a little switch here to Tice. And I am going to take Holiday out, play Lonzo, take out Ingram, and take out Gallinari in one, excuse me. And there's one guy who I wanted to get a lot of ownership on that I had written in that I want to make sure I do before I forget. So we're going to go through that just really quickly. Excuse me. Yeah, who did I have as my guy? Oh, obviously, and he's going to be super mega chalk, but Dennis Schroeder I just didn't have any exposure to yet. You can play all these guys together too, by the way. Paul, Schroeder. I actually kind of like the Schroeder-Paul pairing a little bit better, but I think you can actually play all three of them if you want to go hammer stack, which I think is a good way to go. Do we have enough differentiators here? Probably not. I'm going to have to switch Ingram into... We have maybe an unusual type of build, but certainly we don't have a differentiator to speak of particularly here. So maybe this is a spot where I would consider changing out Zion and leaving him off of like one lineup. I don't really want to leave him off of much. I also think Jason Tatum has turned a corner. I watched him play what looked like a bad game the other night, and he actually played great. He actually put up a good score, but he didn't play great. He was 5 for 15, he put up 41 fantasy points. Raw points is what matters on this slate. You can see the guys I haven't really gone to are the Clippers guys, and that's something I need to, you know what? Let's actually do that with this lineup because I actually want Ingram in here. I want Ingram with the Clippers guys. I think I prefer Kawhi slightly. Actually, you know what? I think I actually prefer Paul George. It's really close for me. I've got him really, really, really bunched up. But I really like both of them. I'm going to play Paul George in this one. Then we'll get some Kawhi exposure soon. Let me take a quick look at this. I don't even mind trying this. Look, you're going to have to make weird plays today to try and survive. These minutes are not going to be encouraging. Hopefully you can get that uptick, but that was with, I believe it was Cantor was out or Tice was out. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. So maybe a route to go here would be, having a little trouble figuring out exactly how I want to do it, but I think this is what I would end up with to get different. Something like that. And you can see you've got the OKC New Orleans stack with the two best players and the three best players, so you've got it stacked kind of nicely. But then you've got the Paul George with Tyson Williams on the other. Like, it's not a good matching. I'm going to have to change that pairing, but it's just I want some exposure to all of these guys. I think you have to just take massive chances, and I'm going to keep saying that over and over again. Let's make sure we get some lineups here with Kawhi. Let's load this up. And I actually think you can play Kawhi and Paul George together if you want to tonight. Their prices make it easy. So I think go ahead and do that if that's what you feel like. We've got a lot of lineups going here on DraftKings. I'm going to take another quick look in chat and see if I'm missing anything that you guys are touching on. How do we approach Q tags with no news? That's a really good question. The problem is there's not one general rule of thumb. You have to pay attention in the industry, and you'll end up getting news later in the day. We're going to find out whether Ingram's playing before lock. I'm almost sure of it. You just have to make sure you're checking, and you can download. There's a million different apps out there that'll tell you if somebody's active or not, and that's what I would. That's what I do anyway. I do like Paul George. I just said a minute ago that I do have a lot of love for Paul George, and I want to try and get some more exposure, but I mostly want to focus on that other game. Like I said, I'm betting on the under here, so I want to get exposure to the game that I'm going to bet the over on, which would be the OKC New Orleans game. I just am going to keep hammering overs on that team until someone basically has to make me stop. But the Q tags, you can ask me, to tweet at me, whatever you have to do. I can help you out with it, but we don't have a definitive answer on this, so we can't tell yet. I'm gonna have to scroll down a little bit more. Sorry guys, I keep forgetting to do that. For some reason, this OBS is not signed up exactly perfectly. Can you still not see? What can't you see exactly now? Because I'm showing it now as it should be showing up. So hopefully that's a little bit of a delayed message because. Do CP3 and Shea correlate well? No, they do not in general, but they both are cheap enough and in a good enough matchup where they can both get there easily. But usually if I'm playing on a big slate, I wouldn't want to play two of these guards together, but I do like all three guards. And even on a big slate, I would consider playing two in this particular matchup because it's a really it's a premium matchup in my opinion. And when you have premium matchups like you did last night with Minnesota or against teams like that, that's when you're getting those ceiling games. When you play against Washington, when you play against New Orleans, teams that play that fast pace and poor defense for that matter too. Both of those things play a major role in that. So we're going to go back to an interesting thing here. We don't. Wow, that's really weird. So wait, Kawhi and Paul George are both not power. No, Paul George must be power forward eligible. How in the world does that make sense, DraftKings? Like, you're going to tell me that neither of them are allowed to play power forward and they both start every game? Like, what are you talking about, DraftKings? Absolutely ridiculous. Sometimes it really irritates me for some reason. But I'm going to take Paul out of one of these. I do like Paul the best tonight of all the guys. Call it a narrative, call it whatever you will. Actually, let's play Schroeder. Oh, we have Schroeder already. Let's put Paul in here with Paul. No, I'm just kidding. Paul, we've got Kawhi in there. I would like to try and get some other exposures to that game. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a little bit of Jaylen Brown, who's got the Q tag, which is also one we have to keep an eye on. But I sort of get the feeling he's going to play in a competitive game here. That's my gut reaction. He's a tough kid. He participated in the morning shoot around, test things up for tip-off. That sounds good to me. And especially sounds good to me when I look at his projected ownership, which we have currently at, stand by. Hey, we actually have him very highly owned. So we'll see how much the Q tag actually bothers people off of him. But we have he and Hayward very highly owned, with Tatum being the guy who's being sort of ignored. I think it's more of a price thing. I would prefer to go with Tatum here. It's going to be hard to make this work from a price standpoint again. What do we do here? Because I want somebody from New Orleans, and I don't know how to get it exactly. I don't want to leave New Orleans out. I guess that I could just do this. It's still not going to get me there. One of the guys, that's the problem with New Orleans, and that's why everyone's having trouble with them today, is they're priced as such where it's hard to play them with some of these other plays that you like. And I've got Ingram there. I can just run it back, I guess, straight with one. I don't like, I guess it's got to be Schroeder only. And then we're going to have to make this more of a game that's sort of leaning more towards the Celtics Clippers, which I do want a little bit of exposure to, but this is not exactly my fantasy. I think this is the best way to do this. And then play Nerlens Noel, who, by the way, I didn't mention before. I love Nerlens Noel for tournaments tonight. I think it's a fantastic play, perfect matchup for him. In fact, that might be the big move that we have to start making. Forget the minute. Like, look, it's going to look brutal, but you want to have a chance to win a tournament. Play him in a chance. What if Steven Adams can't keep up with the pace? What if they struggle? You know what I mean? This could be a Nerlens Noel spot. So that's an interesting one. I actually think I want to rearrange one of my lineups so I get a little bit more Noel. Making all these guys center eligible is going to keep the ownership off of him. He's 3,200. It's a great punt play. So that's the answer, Oscar. The punt play would be Nerlens Noel for me. I think that's a logical one. Melly is definitely worth a flyer. Absolutely. Not an ideal situation, especially if Ingram plays, but certainly worth a flyer. Everything's fine. You can see. Glad to hear it. Guys, really appreciate that you're taking advantage. Please give us the like, the thumbs up. And again, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Really appreciate you guys actually getting involved and making this a real show and having the chat going. And we got some good stuff going. Thoughts on Shamet is a good question. I think that Shamet gets more ownership than he should have on this slate. So initially I thought he'd be like super low owned, and then I started looking at projections and stuff. And you know what? It looks like they've changed. They've sort of evened it out a little bit. Maybe Shamet is an interesting way to go. I can't say no to anyone for GPPs on this kind of a slate. So let's roll some Shamet out there. In fact, I want to get a Shamet with Noel lineup, because if you can get Shamet and no ownership and Noel, again, I'm going to keep mentioning I prefer Josh Hart in these situations, but you got these guys so cheap like Shamet and Noel. I think that's a really good way to go. But don't be surprised if Josh Hart, even if Ingram plays, if Josh Hart somehow finds his way to get to his 30, which you'd be more than happy with, I think, on this slate. So we're going to get a few more lineups out there. I know it just sort of looks like I'm casually flinging money around. Believe me, I'm not. I've done my research. I've got my ownership projections. I'm using a little cheat sheet on my sideboard. If you guys want to go through my ownerships of what I have of each player, feel free to ask me, because I think that's a really good way to decide who you want to end up getting into on this slate. Whether you write scripts or not, I always write a script when I'm playing. It tells me it makes me look at every single player, and it forces me to do a little harder work, but to really get things right, and that's the most important thing, obviously. So we're going to get Shamet into a lineup here instead of Jaylen. I got a little too much Boston here. But probably actually going to be a competitive game. Just don't really like the total. And we've got Ingram sort of all over the place now. I think that you can actually get away with this on this slate, playing these two guys together. Oh, actually, all three might be a little bit of a reach. But I wanted to get rid of Paul George. I wanted to get rid of what's his name anyway. And then look, we're right back to no one is going to play Josh Hart because everyone's going to play Gallinari. Now, I don't like this construction because I have basically everybody from one side and nobody from the other. But I think that this is the kind of slate where you might be able to get away with it. And there's certainly a path where Shea, Schroeder, Gallinari, and Noel can all get there for sure, especially if Adams has played off the court a little bit. Running it back with just Zion, again, it is hard to find run backs you love on New Orleans for most people, but in this one, it's mostly because I want to play Paul George Shamit with the Tatum on the other side. I do like Tatum, guys. I think Tatum is going to be overlooked, and he can play with these guys. At least in his head, he can. So I'm sort of into it. I've been watching. Paul George has looked a lot better defensively to me lately than Kawhi has, for whatever that's worth. I don't expect it to continue, but that's just one thing I've noticed. Let's talk a little bit more about BetQL because we've done a lot of DFS stuff. I want to bring up our page here. This is the free site. This is the game of the day. So basically, you've got a 3-star game here that we've got, we got the Pels here. Like, I mean, this is not a game I want to bet on. I don't like the things. You got 12 in a row for Oklahoma City on the road against the spread. I don't feel good about it. I feel like the best way to play this kind of slate, if you want to make a bet on that Clippers Celtics under. I don't want to touch this. I just want to bet the over. We also have other tools that tell us where the sharps are at. I'm actually going to read some to you because I don't want to give away all the information for free. I just accidentally do it sometimes. First of all, I didn't mention this, but the top DK values on the slate on RotoQL are Tyson Harrell. They actually are higher than Gallinari over here, which is kind of shocking, but it's kind of worth noting. The top FanDuel ones, you have Lou Williams and Marcus Smart. Those are sort of guys I'm not really using much on DraftKings, but I certainly have some interest in FanDuel, and we'll do some FanDuel breakdowns in a little bit. But again, wanted to show you guys just the main page here. You have all the action that you could ever want and need, and all the sports books, all the information. It's all there. This is the free game of the day. I'm still familiarizing myself with all of this, and we're going to look at some different trends from the game, like situational. The Thunder 20-5 in all games well on the road this season. That's a trend. That's pretty amazing, actually. Why are they so good on the road? That's the same trend you're seeing there everywhere, and it makes a lot of sense to me. It would make a lot of sense to bet the Thunder tonight, but I'm not betting against this Pelicans team. We don't know who they are yet, and to me, they've run into some rough games. I think they're going to make a run. Vegas trusts them. I trust them. I think this is a really, really good basketball team that's a year away from contending for a title. I really think they're that close. A couple other things that just to note, obviously Kawhi is the top projected overall scorer and will certainly be popular, make for good reason. He's a terrific play. Hard to argue with that one. Some of the BetQL, like one thing is if you download the free BetQL app, you can vote on these polls and see what other bettors are thinking. Like you can get free content out of that. So if I were you guys, just go download the BetQL app as soon as possible. The BetQL and RotoQL apps are awesome. Just do it right away. Over 60% of BetQL users don't think the Thunder will win their 13th game against the spread. They view the Pelicans as the best bet. That's the BetQL users. Again, that's sort of where I initially leaned, but then you see that 12 in a row, and that's a little bit scary. So just interesting. So 350 users from BetQL have weighed in. 33% of them view the Celtics as the best bet to win the East if the Bucks don't. Followed by the Raptors at 25%, followed by the Heat, followed by the Sixers, followed by the Pacers. Now I'm going to go, and here's what I'm going to say. Put it on record, put it on air. I don't care. I don't care if I'm going to get heat from it for that. I think the Sixers are going to give the Bucks all they can handle. The Sixers are a team that plays to their opponents and plays down to their opponents and up to their opponents. And when they play good teams, they play well. They're long. They're tough to beat in a playoff series. If you want a sleeper bet the Sixers. That's your sleeper bet to win the title. Like seriously, they're the one team that has been really bad but could be really good. And I know they're 9-19 on the road and they never win road games. How can you win if you don't win road games when you're not going to have a high seed? All that stuff. I don't worry about it. Just don't worry about it. This team has way too much talent to just think that somehow they're going to just get rolled over in in the East. I just don't see that. I don't see how anybody just smokes them. They have the perfect kind of team to stop Giannis. Perfect. And then I would follow with the Heat and Raptors too, but the Sixers certainly would be the most likely to me. I would not bet the Celtics to win the East, but I do like the Celtics team. I like that their team. I would prefer, if I had to bet on one of them, I would bet on the Sixers, and you get better odds too. So that's a few things just from BetQL that we like. Tell me some other things you guys would like to see. What do you want to talk about? Ask specific QQs, or tell us specifically what from a betting standpoint you like, or you're interested in, what from a DFS perspective you're interested in. We got everything here for you, and I'm just waiting for you guys to let us know. Let me make this page a little bit prettier while we got it up here. It's fine. You sort of get the gist of everything, and I'm just going to leave that up there for a minute while I answer some questions. Would I have a core 4 or 5 today? So to answer that question, yeah, I would. I haven't necessarily acted on that on these recent DraftKings ones. I built the initial lineup using it, and they're all sort of children of the initial lineup anyway. The core guys for me are definitely going to be Danilo, Gallinari, Zion, Shea, Chris Paul. Those are my main guys. That's where I'm at right now. Those are the core for me. Now, you're not getting extremely low ownership on any of those guys, so you're going to have to make pivots elsewhere. So my core, the guys who I have who are low owned the most, Tice, who's in the 20% range probably tonight. I'm going to have a ton of Nerlens Noel. I don't have it yet, but I plan on getting there. He's going to be in the 20% range. I don't know, actually. It's going to be interesting to see what happens with centers because it's pretty loaded. I'm going to have some exposure to Marcus Morris, to Ivica Zubac. I'm going to have more than the field on Drew Holiday. He's one of my differentiators, big time. I'm going to have more of the field on Lonzo, even though he's fairly owned. And then I'll try to be ahead on the Celtics guys, maybe a little behind on the Clippers guys, except for I will be behind on Jaylen Brown. 6K, high ownership. I could see myself fading that one and taking a hugely variant turn, like in playing a Josh Hart or something, who's going to be completely unowned. I also really like the idea of using Enes Kanter. Can literally play 25 minutes and get you 40, and you may not need it. I mean, he can just straight up outscore Tyson. That's all you need. If he outscores Tyson Harrell, you're golden. If you play one of those two with him, and those are the highest scoring centers, boom, you just nailed it. Derek Favors, I'd like to be ahead of the field on. I don't love him, but I just think that at low ownership, he certainly can crush this value. So that's interesting to me. He's playing a little bit of J.J. Redick here and there, a little bit of Landry Shamet, as we just talked about. I might throw a lineup in with Terrence Ferguson or Jackson Hayes. You have to get a little bit creative. I just threw one in with Grant Williams. If you're going to play these chalky guys, you're going to have to get creative somewhere if you want to have a chance to win. Somebody's going to win tonight, and somebody's going to win with a guy with less than 10% is my guess. Or somewhere, maybe on the slate it'll be a few guys in the 15 to 25% range. But you just got to do something different. Otherwise, you're tying with everyone. If anyone's going to win individually, that's the way it's going to go. Zubac or Harrell for center on FanDuel. Who do I like better? I prefer Harrell, but I think that factoring in ownership, and I'm just going to take a quick look at my FanDuel owner. I think you're going to see a significantly higher ownership on Harrell than you will on Zubac. So my lean would be to go Zubac if you felt like your lineup was too chalky and you were trying to win a tournament. But I do prefer Harrell over Zubac, just straight up. Oscar Sanchez, he's digging it. He's on board. All right. We've got Zubac, Harrell. I already answered that. Who's the lock? Who is one lock on all lineups? So that's Oscar. I like the question, but I don't play that way. I don't think that that's a smart way to play. I don't like when people do, unless if you love one play that much, then maybe that will happen. Zion, I think I have one lineup without Zion so far. I don't think I have 100% of anybody. Zion, Chris Paul stand out, as being some of those guys, but I'm not a locker. I occasionally will, sure. I did it the other day with Oladipo, but I don't think that you need to make when you're giving up the ability to make decisions, which is the only ability we have in this game. Why would I give that up just because it sounds cool like a lot of the other analysts say, oh, you either play or fade that guy? That's not right. You don't just have to play. If you're playing multiple lineups, you don't have to do that. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's stupid, in my opinion. And people get away with that all the time. It just makes no sense. That's what I want to bring that's different to the table. You're going to get transparency. You're going to get success, but that won't be different. I think other sites can be helpful as well. You're going to get great projections from the RotoQL, BetQL people. You're going to get me telling you exactly what I think, and I genuinely don't care what the other analysts in the industry say about me, because they actually do. I get along great with them, and I'm friends with them somehow, but I will be the first to call them out when you listen to a show and someone tells you recommend 75 plays. That's not the way to go, and also locking or fading is not just a strategic. It's an oddity that people would even think about doing that. To me, that doesn't make any sense at all. I'm going to use this second to say, hey, please give us the thumbs up again. And I'm a little new to doing my own shows. I'm actually pretty comfortable with it, but I really appreciate the chat going back and forth, because it does get hard to just continually talk like this without knowing and really getting a sense for how people are gauging it. So tell us you like it. Give us the thumbs up and the like. We really appreciate that. Follow us, subscribe, all that stuff. At me on Twitter at BobbyFi, because I will help you answer late breaking questions. Just do not DM me, because I get a million DMs and I try to get one person to just ask me the question. That way I can answer it in general across Twitter. Makes it a lot easier for me. Where's this guy been for like 2 years? I hope that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing, Jake. I'll take that as a compliment, regardless of whether it was or not. I'm happy that you feel that way. I'm here now, and we're going to be crushing. You're going to see, K Bronco wants to see the FanDuel lineups. Good time to get into it. You can see I'm playing some high stake stuff on FanDuel. So I believe in hot streaks. This may be a good or a bad time to talk about this. I tend to get a lot more money out there when I'm in the middle of a good streak, and I think you play better. You're more willing to take the appropriate risks. I found that was true when I played poker for 8 years, and it certainly is true in this. It's willing to maybe go with a lower projection. And I know I'm working for a projection site, but you take the lower projection on certain spots because you know what the right game strategy thing is to do. But anyway, the whole point is like you can do those moves. You can make the big bluff in poker or whatever just very comfortably when you're doing well. And I've been doing. Oh, they sold out this tournament. I was going to play more entries today. Okay, so I've got to make a note to the people on StateKings for that. This was my first build, my first sort of go at it. I think that it's fine. I like the Drew thing. I think he ends up lower owned than he should be. Probably going to need to make a tweak here and there. Again, I sort of prefer Paul George a little bit over Kawhi personally. It's just me, just a personal preference. I saw him play really poorly the other night. Maybe I feel like he owes me one a little bit, not really, but I think he's still, like even on a regular slate, I would be considering him here because I think he played pretty much his absolute floor game against Philly. And in a tight game, I don't think he's going to be putting up less than that, 34. And I think that you're going to see 50s basically as often as you see anything else. I really like him, in this particular spot. Jalen, obviously, we talked about how chalky he's going to be. So maybe to try and do something a little bit on FanDuel that's maybe a little bit different. I really do like the Noel thing over here because no one's going to play him. But in this particular lineup, we can sort of forgo that because I wanted to try, like no one's going to pay up for Tatum over here either when they see the other options. So it's kind of an interesting thing to maybe try and figure out a way to do that. Again, let's put Schroeder in here and see if we can make this work because I like the rest of this build. And maybe we just have to downgrade Lonzo. Actually, you know what? I love Drew. Well, you know what? We already have Drew over there too. So let's play our Lonzo and Ingram lineup. Or actually, you know what? Yeah, we can't do the Ingram thing. I'm gonna have to take a quick look. Again, Josh Hart, sneaky play of the day. Not that I so much love him, but certainly can get there and is just going to be unowned. So when the guy's going to be unowned like that, it's hard not to have some interest. Again, you're going to see a lot of me just hammering away at these OKC guys. I think that's sort of what you have to do tonight, to be honest with you. Like, you have to play some of them. It's just about getting the right ones. And then Marcus Smart is, like, to double pair, because I'm going to pay this price for Hart, it makes just as much sense. One real good piece of DFS advice I can give everyone out there, if you have guys where you're debating between the same price, and you think that they're both interesting plays, try to play them both together. It's just not the way that most people build their lineups, and it's a really solid way to go. Over here, I could see why Zubac would actually maybe get more ownership than Harrell at 4,800, but really all of these guys are fine. I think I'll end up rotating my centers and play the lower owned guys here and there. I have a little Boston exposure in this game. Got a nice little double man stack with Smart and Tatum versus Zubac and George. I kind of like that little stack, and then you've got the obviously it's hard not to correlate on a 2-game slate, but nice little correlation in the OKC New Orleans game with Zion and Lonzo against Chris Paul and Danilo. Not that this is off the board enough probably, but I do think that Tatum is going to be a lower owned play, and I really like him today. So maybe playing a high end and maybe play Tatum and Kawhi in some power forward spots. I certainly think that's a viable way to go. But anyway, that's just sort of where I'm at. We're going to keep breaking those down. I'll be doing more of it later. I'd like to wait a little later till I start breaking more down. So I'll mention some other, maybe percentages of guys that I'll have tonight. I'm also going to see another one. Let's see. Loving you working hard. Really appreciate this, Oscar. You guys have really, really been nice to me so far and really appreciate it. Sweet Lou will be highly owned on FanDuel. Yes, I do think he'll be highly owned on FanDuel, but probably not as high as he should be. I think there's some fear factor here when it comes to Sweet Lou. So the problem is it's not like the other options are so great, except for the Oklahoma City guys. So if you're going to fade them, I do think Lou is a really, an interesting way to go. It's not like a great matchup for him or anything. You've got everybody healthy for the Clippers, but at this price, at 5,500, which I haven't gotten there yet, is a really, really solid avenue, a solid route to go. And I'm just going to take a quick look at our RotoQL projections in a minute. I'm looking less at projections on these slates. So I know it's a projection site, again, that I work for. I think we're talking about the sports betting part of it a little more today. But to try and to become too much of a projection slave on a 2-game slate is tough. What I do love about the projections, and I'm just going to reiterate what I mentioned earlier about it, the projections are matching with what I think are good plays, which would be the Tice Harrell potentially being even better plays than Gallo. And then also that Marcus Smart and Lou Williams are definitely the best values on FanDuel, which actually reminds me that I kind of want to get a Marcus Smart and Lou Williams lineup in together. Even though it's chalky, I don't really care all that much. I'm happy to go with it. And I don't even mind, because of the way the nature of the slate breaks down, to try and do what I just said. Like, you can try and do the Kawhi Tatum thing, even with Lou Williams in the same lineup. And I think that I just have no problem with it. I'm hoping Chris Paul is lower owned over here. People may not remember, but Chris Paul did play a lot of years in New Orleans and always has a little something extra for him. It's not like a revenge. Sometimes that word gets overly thrown around, but it is like what I would say is like maybe it gives him a little extra ammo and got some friends in town. He wants to, stuff like that. It makes a little bit of a difference is what I'm saying, I guess. Just a hardcore LA Clippers Boston stack right here. Probably don't want to end up doing it that far, especially because if Cantor does go off, it probably requires the other Boston guys to have a little bit of a dead game. So this might be the spot where you use the Adams play, and then boom, you still have a little bit of that, because then you can get it. Okay, so when you're looking at correlation between players in general, now it doesn't matter as much on a 2-game slate, but in general, you should be looking at guys who are going to take away from each other. Obviously, there is paths that Jaylen Brown can get there from a steal, block, rebound angle. Jason Tatum, same thing too. Marcus Smart is even more so true. But mostly Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown are those guys that they don't need to score for you, so I'm not worried about them taking away from Tatum's usage. So guys like that tend to correlate better than, say, maybe a Gordon Hayward and Tatum wouldn't correlate quite as well. Again, 2-game slate, you can do it, but don't correlate quite as well as the other guys do, if that makes sense. If you don't understand it, please let me know. Happy to answer any questions anytime. I'm just going to make sure I get these into some. And who am I leaving out today? Who is a guy who maybe I haven't been playing that you guys are into? Maybe there's a guy that you guys like that I don't. We'll figure all that stuff out, Oscar. We'll figure out how to get a player pool. We're in the works. We're in the early stages. We're going to make this work for you guys. SGA is an awesome play, obviously, but again, trying to stay away from a little chalk and playing so much CP and Schroeder, or want to get some more Schroeder, that I might be able to forgo him a little bit. You got my FanDuel, right, K Bronco? All good there? You got an idea of sort of what I want to do, at least? I'll leave it up there so you can see a little bit better. Again, it looks like we're sort of running short on questions. Guys, we're going to head out of here in a few minutes, but get some QQs in before we get out of here. Get some thoughts. Ask some questions about some straight sports betting, some other BetQL things that I wanted to mention before we get out of here. So basically, the public and sharp bettors are on Boston. I think that I completely understand why. I would lean Boston and an under if I was a betting man on this. I am a betting man, so that's where I would lean. I don't know that I'm going to pull the trigger on the Boston part, but I will pull the trigger for $100, a couple $100 or so on the under in that game. Maybe even a little higher, because I really feel good about that one. Public bettors leaning on the Pelicans. Sharps hammering the Pelicans against the spread. Interesting. That goes along with what I feel, but it worries the hell out of me because the public are not the people I listen to as much as the experts, and the sharps are hammering it though too. Like it just feels weird to bet against a team that's won their last 12 games and is at full strength, and they've won their last, or they've beaten the spread the last 12 games on the road, and it's a 3.5 point spread. So it's hard for me. Sharp bettors love the Pelicans to beat the Thunder outright. 94% of the money wagered on the money line has gone to the Pelicans. By the way, this is great information. I love just having this right here at my fingertips. Really, really helpful from BetQL, and really appreciate it. Really, really, really easy. Look, man. It makes me nervous. I like the Pelicans too, but I would be lying if I said I don't feel nervous about that game. That when a trend goes like that and you have 12 in a row on the road, while I do like the Pelicans too, it's certainly not one that I'm going to bet money on. Other people seem very convinced on this one. I'm hopeful. I'm just not as convinced. I don't like to bet when I'm hopeful. Anyway, that's sort of where we are. I think that's most of the trends I was looking at. People love the public sharp bettors are all over the Clippers Celtics under. We talked about that one, and they're hammering the Pelicans Thunder over. We talked about that one. Those are the bets for today for me. The under and then the over. That's it. It's not simple as that. That's all I got. I don't really have the interest in betting on these teams to win. If I did, it would be the Celtics, but that's not the route that I'm going. I'm going the other direction. Have some really good messages from some very well-respected people in both the sporting and DFS world, just partly after the big win last night. But a lot of people really excited about see what we can bring to you guys. And there's one thing, I might have had problems with different people I've worked with in the industry in the past. I have never had any problems with anybody in terms of shows or quality, and I am very open to feedback. So whatever you guys want more of or less of from me, let me know. Let us know things we can improve on. Let us know what kind of shows we're going to be customizing towards you guys. I mean, this is for you, so let's make sure we're doing it the right way. I'm just going to go real quick back to DraftKings, leave that up there for a little bit so you guys can have a quick look. Real quickly, Melly, if Brandon Ingram is out, Melly is definitely an interesting option to take a long shot on. I wouldn't feel good about it, but I definitely would be willing to do it. Slates like this, you have to be different to take down. Absolutely, punts are key. Well, you go with solid plays, but you have to mix in, Oscar. You have to mix in some of those like 1 and 2 percenters. Maybe this question was already answered by what I was saying before, but in case it wasn't, that's where you mix in. You have 20% of a guy like, or 25% of a guy like Enes Kanter, who's going to be unowned. Like I've got up here. You go for different types of lineup builds by playing a Kanter and Noel, because they're both center only eligible. Like that's an interesting route that people aren't going to go. I think that Tice Harrell, well, I just don't think everybody's going to be using a center necessarily in their utility spot, and that's what I'm going to do. There's a lot of good plays out there, even for a 2-game slate. So you can see I'm mostly hammering with the center and the utility. You play some of your Zubac's, and maybe I want to get a little more of Zubac actually, now that I think of it. So maybe let's play throw this one in another 222. So yeah, it's a good question. Overall, you always want to try and error by making the best plays, but you definitely need to be super different on 2 and 3 and 4-game slates even. So I would be a fan of tonight just going completely off of it, not risking a huge amount of money like I am. That's probably my best advice, but I would I certainly think there is value to be had tonight. So let's just put it that way. I appreciate the QLTV guys, Dan, whoever that is doing that. Appreciate you guys getting in some of the highlights that we talked about. I did mention all these, but again, maybe in case you weren't here, it's good for you to see them. Garth, really appreciate that. Baseball, man, I tend to cry. Like I do well in NFL every year. I had 1 year where I think I may have lost like $1,000 in NFL, but I've won every other year of my life, and I've done very well some years, including this one. But I have crushed NBA and MLB from the get-go, and those are my true passions. So I'm excited about MLB, but honestly, I'm really enjoying the basketball. I'm kind of sad this is the last day, but I need the All-Star break. I got to go buy a new car, leaning Tesla. Any ideas? Throw it out there. I think Tesla's where I'm going. That seems kind of silly to ever have to pay for gas anymore. I feel like Tesla will pay for itself in a few years, so that's where I'm going. Again, dropping great information in there from the QLTV people. I think I got to all your questions, but if I didn't, make sure to get them in now because I'll be out of here in 2 minutes. And again, guys, couldn't thank you enough for watching the show and really tuning in and everything. You'll be able to watch this again on video. Those of you who are watching on video, I appreciate that. Please like, thumbs up, subscribe. We need to get this train rolling, and I expect within the next couple of weeks you're going to see about, I don't know, 5 times the number of people in here. Maybe it'll take a month, but we're going to be seeing a lot more people. So let's get the information out there while we can. Let's get it out there. You don't want to hear about the Dodgers? Too bad, Garth. It's even just for DFS purposes, you're going to have to hear about the Dodgers and They're a good team too, so you're going to hear a lot from them. Tesla stock over their cars. Interesting. So my issue is not that I love the Tesla so much. I do like them, by the way. But I really like the car because it seems kind of crazy to pay for gas. When I drive a ton, so I end up spending more money on gas than I would be paying for a lease. Like, it just doesn't make any sense why I even do that. So why wouldn't I get an electric car? That's it. Max salary left on the table. Great question, Joseph. Today is a day where you can leave up to, I would say, if your lineup is fairly chalky, I would say up to 1,000. I don't think it's optimal. I think there's still room to maneuver. But I think you can leave up to 1,000, especially on DK. Like FanDuel is a little tighter pricing actually than usual. FanDuel, I'd probably say 500 or 600 I would go, and maybe 1,000 on DK. But that's usually I'm like 300 or 400 guy. That's the question. Oscar asked right at the same time Joseph did, so we know what's on people's minds, guys. They want to know about it. Anyway, guys, again, thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate it. I'm gonna get out of here. Thanks for hanging in there. We will do live shows very, very well. Very, very often every day. And we'll just make sure we find a time that works for everyone the best. Don't want to interfere with maybe some other stuff you guys are doing, your work schedule. So we will find a set time and we'll figure that out after the All-Star break. In the meantime, really appreciate y'all and look forward to seeing you after the All-Star break. Let's crush it. Let's make some money tonight and let's get back at it after the All-Star break. Thanks for tuning in, guys, and make sure you all like and subscribe.